Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast. This is Bottle. We are talking about AI, search, and the power of brands. My name's Natasha. I am one of the co-owners of Bottle, if you don't already know me. And this is Colin. Give us a wave, Colin. He is the other co-owner of Bottle. So you've got the two at the top table here talking to you today. Thank you all for coming. Hello to you gorgeous clients out there. And for those who aren't clients, if you want to be gorgeous, you could also become a client. We've had a lot of people signing up for today. It's a popular topic. We're all scratching our heads and working out what this all means. At Bottle, of course, we're doing the internal thing, thinking about how it can improve how we do our work and our processes. But also, in fact, more importantly, we're thinking about how the external world are responding to AI and how consumers are thinking about how they respond to brands and how they think about or engage with brands in a way that's different to what they've done before. So that's the whole reason why we're here today. So welcome. We have done a little bit of soul searching, thinking about how our channels are going to be affected by AI. And we've done a report and really launched that recently. The link to that report is in the chat. The planning team have done a lot of work on that. It's probably only going to be relevant for about 6 months, just because everything's changing so quickly. So if you haven't looked at it already, please do look at that report. The link is in the chat. And this webinar isn't a summary of that report. We've tried to kind of add some extra value and talk about some of the bigger scale things that are impacting us in our world of digital PR. So today we're going to cover some of that. The report is there for you to review, share. But what we'd really like is to hear from you today as well. So if you have any insights, any builds, any feedback, and most importantly, any questions, then if you can use the Q&A function here in the meeting and post any up at any point during the session, and we'll do our best to answer as many of those that we can. Also, mine and Colin's emails are in the chat. If you need to get in touch with us, then please do. The presentation will last hopefully just 30 minutes, which gives us some time just so you can manage your diary. I'll now just pass over to Colin, who is going to take us through the main point today.
Thanks, Tash. So as Tash set up, there's 3 kind of sections to what we'd like to try and share today under the AI search and the power of brand bits. So first bit is about the landscape and how that's changing, or how we see it changing, and how AI might be affecting some of that. So AI and the changing landscape. Then why search should matter, we believe anyway, to all of us that are responsible for content, brand, marketing, all the way through the funnel, and how that is affected by some of those changes or future changes. And then finally, the kind of big takeouts that we think are there, not the detailed nitty-gritty stuff, more the kind of slightly bigger picture takeouts we think are useful for brand, marketing, content, PR teams as we move forward. So first of all, search everywhere. It's an expression that people are using more and more, not just because of AI. There has been a kind of landscape that has been changing in and around search. And so most of us are familiar, obviously. Most of our job historically has been thinking about search very much in the context of search engines. And that's where a lot of the skills and knowledge has built up, SEO knowledge, particularly around Google, but also, of course, other search engines. And that's, in terms of people's behavior, that's still, as we'll come on and share, that's still a place where search for facts and latest information is directed and takes place primarily. But search is also a function that is used for product searches in many of the e-commerce platforms, and some people are going there directly, especially if they have already identified the purchase stage and what they're at. So Amazon, obviously, and again, there's a skill set associated with how to build the digital shelf visibility of brands within any of those platforms. Amazon, Walmart is a big sort of global e-commerce brand, obviously focused on the US and elsewhere, less so here. And platforms like Temu, where people are going directly for product searches. There's also social search, and again, a lot of stuff, particularly in the last, I would say, 12, 18 months, building up about what is search within a social environment, even though the search functionality has been there in most of those, if we especially include YouTube as a social platform, which we tend to. Primarily, again, looking at trends and visual discovery is the kind of the purpose for being on there and searching. And a lot of conversation driven by the rise of TikTok and how it performs as a search-specific platform, and the rise of that. And then, of course, the bit that mostly we're talking about here today, the rise of AI assistants, generative AI, LLMs, large language models, or multimodal models, as they're becoming. So ChatGPT is probably the leading brand name that we're familiar with there, but I have a lot of affection for Claude personally, and from Anthropic as a particular assistant, AI assistant that we use quite a lot, and Gemini associated with Google itself. And as we want to share a bit as well, that's a place where search or search-like behavior is certainly taking place, but again, within the context more of this sort of deep dives and complex questions. So it's starting to look like search everywhere, but as we'll share, it doesn't always look the same as search, as we've talked about it before. That rise of generative AI, we've all probably used or using it, and to some extent within our daily lives and our working lives and stuff as well. But the rise of it feels like it's been very fast in many respects. The kind of stats on some of that, particularly from OpenAI's sort of stats on this, as the leading platform that a lot of people are using. That steep curve around the rise of weekly users now at the kind of 400 million when we did the slide, and probably more weekly users. They predict it's going to be 1 billion by the end of the year. 10% of searchers, again in inverted commas, they would say are using generative AI and OpenAI's ChatGPT platform first. And 14% of people are engaging with AI tools daily. But like a lot of digital platforms, the usage and how people are behaving is kind of distributed across different age groups. But the point is, I guess, we are all, right the way through to some of the older age groups, we are all using it or beginning to use it to some extent, but the usage is more clustered towards younger, sort of certainly below 45 age groups. 10% of people 45 plus, which includes me, and in this YouGov stats as well, have used ChatGPT. It doesn't mean to say they're a daily user of it, but it's spreading, it's growing fast. But in many respects, never mind just in search, in terms of web destinations on the internet, Google still rules. It's the most visited by some, as you can see there, some huge distance. And in fact, the second place one there is a Google platform, YouTube as well. They are by far and away the largest places that people visit online, have been and still remain. And the rest are a long tail of much smaller at the moment, places where we are all going online from social platforms. And as you can see, they're in 8th place. You can see that ChatGPT is a new arrival and arriving fast on there. But still, Google, all like a lot of things that people like to claim in marketing about things being dead, Google is still very alive and well. And in fact, the number of searches that were performed on Google increased in 2024 rather than diminished. So that is alive, well, growing, highly visited. And that's one of the points that we'll be talking about in the context, at least to try and set the context for this rise of AI. And some of this is also, I think, personal point of view, as well as just the stats we've got here. This is from Harvard Business Review, where they did a study in 24 and now I've updated it in 25. Like, what are we actually using AI for, particularly the large language models that we talked about there? Everyone's still working it out, and you can see from some of the shifts that are going on there, it's changing over the course of 12 months to quite some extent. These are like the big themes of things that we are using AI and generative AI for. And things that were big last year are dropping down, and other things are moving up and stuff as well. This arena of personal and professional support that was kind of the third biggest percentage, 17% in 2024, is now the biggest use. things that looked like research and analysis and decision making was 10% is dropping down to 9. And in fact, as we come on to, there's the big themes of use of AI. As we come on to the more sort of granular version of that and stuff as well, the thing that we might term specific searches, which all of them have got a functionality for, that was in last year the kind of third ranking use case for generative AI. It's dropped right out of the top 10. It's now dropped in 2025 down to 13th place. So the idea of using it like we would use a search engine before was something we were trying out last year, is now less so. And in fact, a lot of those other use cases are rising, that kind of arena that's in that personal and professional bit, therapy, companionship, organizing my life, finding purpose. These areas are ones that are now becoming, at least over the course of that 12 months, part of that shift. The point, I guess, is, well, twofold. One is maybe it's too narrow for us to kind of almost think of this as a search alternative, because that behavior is maybe not quite as explicitly true. But also that a lot of the things that we are going to it for, I would say, are things that, those who are sort of making stories and content on behalf of brands and brandings. These are all points of engagement, for B2B, B2C brands. These are questions or explorations that consumers are doing that we would like probably to be able to support with our content, be seen and found in order to try and help be relevant to the things that people are doing. So those use cases are changing and will continue to, I think, as we all, the platforms themselves develop and as we all experiment, try different things that we find valuable and useful in using AI, generative AI in that way, but it's changing. If we just think about the search bit, then this is a kind of depiction of how it is in 2025 across those four big clusters that I've talked about: search engines, e-commerce, social search, and AI assistants. And I guess some of the instant point there again is when it comes to search and search-like behavior, Google and search engines are still by far and away the biggest player there. Google still more than 60% of where we go for answers in a search-like way. E-commerce, between Amazon and then the others, is about 13% in total. Social, with YouTube included in there. TikTok, 3% of what we might term search-like behavior. YouTube in the total cluster there, again, about the same size as e-commerce. And then the AI assistant bit, ChatGPT, the biggest part of that. All the other ones, Claude, etc., so as well, Gemini, together add up to about 5% of search-like behavior. So it's growing fast as platforms. Perhaps the search-like bit of them is still something that we are all working out. Is that a good place to go for what I used to do search? Or is it a place where I'm doing other kinds of deep dive exploration that isn't really like that? And what does that mean for brands? So, like I said, we are all looking for answers. We're spending time online, but does it look like search? This is just a quick sort of example, I guess, of one that we would be very familiar with and stuff as well in terms of like Google type search. Typically the queries that we type into a search bar as a sort of unbranded search in this example of stuff as well, they're short. A couple of 2 to 4 words typically is the length of a query that we're all used to doing. The way we do that is we're not thinking as users of search about keywords, but that's still one hand washes the other. That's how we've thought about developing an SEO skill set that is focused around those keywords and the way that we do that. So it's kind of keyword focused, it's formal, it's literal, it's not necessarily full sentences, it's those kind of intention based things. And an example that would be best protein powder. That's the kind of thing that we would typically have searched for in Google. The same kind of thing if we're using OpenAI, ChatGPT, it's long. Typically the queries that we're typing in there are more than 30 words, as it doesn't really look the same at all as Google. It's more conversational, it's more complete sentences. They're complex in stages with context as well added in, quite detailed and specific. So in this example, what's the best protein powder for someone who works out 3 times weekly, lactose intolerant, and wants something sustainably sourced? So we are becoming practiced in the prompts that we're writing in adding what we want, what is the context, and layering in that kind of context detail into those queries. So it doesn't look like search as we're used to. And again, if it's TikTok and we think about the search behavior there, ultra brief, tends to be kind of hashtag, trend specific, focused, using the vernacular of the platform much more. And it might look something like hashtag protein check as a kind of search. We're trying to get into something that is already a vibe, something that is actually shared and used a lot within that platform. And people that use TikTok a lot more than I do are much more acquainted with how to get to the place that they want to get to with a search term like that. So yes, it's search. And, these are all examples of the same kind of thing, but it doesn't look the same. And that presents some of the change in thinking that we might think about how we build the findability of brands in these kinds of different platforms as they change and grow. So like I said, TikTok, for example, has been called a search platform, but it's fundamentally different. Typically, people search in the way we described there, but once you conducted that search, you're being then served algorithmically served content, and that's then what people do. They don't tend to pursue a journey in the same way that we would with a Google search, where we will, in 42% of examples, click through to websites. As a result of that search, it becomes a search like hashtag protein check, and then we engage in the scroll of the content that's served to us, rather than pursue necessarily a singular source in that way. So that kind of, not just the way we search, but then what we do once we've searched is different certainly to Google. And ChatGPT, it's not very SEO-y search in the way that most of us have sort of learned the SEO way of thinking about search. 70% of prompts don't really have traditional search query patterns, even though there are a lot of search-like prompts, still much fewer than Google. 78%, so nearly 4/5 of prompts on AI have got that kind of multiple question format to it. And not only that, but more than a fifth, nearly a quarter of the AI queries aren't even necessarily text-based still as well. We're using other elements like images as part of the search. And even though that functionality is being part of particularly Google still as well, we tend not to use Google that way as much as we're now learning to use ChatGPT and other generative AI platforms. But it serves up brands in the results. Okay, this is in our report, we use a sort of protein example again as well. This is one just looking at our own use case or our own brand at Bottle and stuff as well. In that, from when you give ChatGPT a search-like prompt, so in this case, can you suggest a short list of 10 digital PR agencies who could pitch for a pet food brand? That query is serving up a list of results. So it kind of looks a bit like how we might expect results to come from a previous search in Google in that way. It's providing much more of a sort of rich snippet in that list. It's certainly providing links in the way that we would want or we've been sort of thinking about search results before. And a summary of the citations at the bottom. Personally, if I were a client looking for a digital PR agency, quite a few of those results and the training and the knowledge they're not hallucinogenic, but they're certainly not necessarily digital PR agencies. We are probably one of the few that's been served there, one or two other competitors, but otherwise there's everything from dog talent agencies to advertising agencies in that list of results that it's served up. So not necessarily accurate in that, but of course we're all used to then challenging the results that it gives us and interrogating it further to try to get to that iterative process that ChatGPT often offers. So I guess the main thing in some respects is the things that we're used to from a brand promotion point of view in search. A lot of those things are still intact in that sense of links and offering a direction of travel for people to come visit the site and find out more. Claude, one of my favorites, less good at providing that kind of link thing. So it's set of results for the same kind of query. We're in there, of course. Number one, that is a list that I would recognize as probably good digital PR agencies for that kind of query with this explanation, but not as obvious or easy in terms of click, link, follow, citation-based kind of results on that. So less about then the assisting the next stage of, let's say, a journey towards a destination that is, further consideration and inquiry in the way that we would have considered Google search. And Google, of course, is employing AI, is not just Gemini, but sort of Gemini is part of AI overviews. And I'm sure we've all seen that as part of the dominant position more often, not always, but more often the dominant position in a search query these days in Google search, where position 0, if you like, the first position is occupied by an AI overview, a kind of supercharged featured snippet, and the way in which we're finding that most of our clients get featured in AI overviews is by and large the same kinds of tactics that you would employ in order to get into previously a featured snippet. So again, good results as far as that, or some not bad results on that. And again, plenty of links still within the AI overview. So link citations, sidebar kind of summaries of the suggestions that it is making to, yes, a very high intent kind of search within AI overviews. So yes, they're all search-like or can be used in that way, even if that's not necessarily how we're currently using AI, generative AI models the most. They will present brands and brand results in a way that most of us might have been familiar with from Google before. So one of the things that is changing, of course, and that was changing anyway, and has been a feature, I guess, of Google search over time, has been this result of, by serving up either feature snippets or AI overviews, the intention within Google to try and give you the complete answer means that the click-through rates have been a diminishing factor. So fewer people, even with the links and citations included there, aren't necessarily clicking on those because they've got their top 10. They got their answer, in some cases, contained within that AI overview, and increasingly accurate. The sort of hallucinations part of that probably less than a lot of us were critical of when it first launched. So the landscape's changing. Google hasn't been knocked off its perch, at least in terms of, well, not just search, but as an overall massive presence in all of our online behavior in that respect. But there is a rapid rise, particularly of the AI models as well as the social search. Why does that matter? If you're, I think from our audience today, if you're a brand team, content team, SEO team, PR team, the kinds of relationships at a brand level that we often find, we talk a lot about the fact that this has always been part of a full funnel approach to marketing. So why we should all care about search and why that might be changing as a result of that. We've always called it findability, because that's our focus. The marketing funnel, if you like, and stuff as well, which is the oldest marketing model that has been around, apparently, has had lots of different ways of labeling it. But typically, I might say awareness, consideration in the middle, purchase through the marketing goals as you move through that funnel. We think about the audience's mindset in each of those levels as being different. So at the top of the funnel, people are living their lives, and our job when we're marketing is to, yes, grab their attention because they're not necessarily looking. Looking belongs in the consideration bit when people are taking a less passive, more active role. So the job at the top is different to the job in the middle, and then the job at the bottom is when people are buying, when people are actively looking to make some kind of purchase. So people's setup and behavior, and especially online, that relates to people who are browsing, scrolling at the top of the funnel, people who are actively searching in the middle, people who are shopping at the bottom, and that gives us a bottle, our 3Fs. Fame is the digital PR strategy that we direct towards those objectives at the top of the funnel. Findability, and can we make your brand more findable, and when people are behaved in looking and searching for solutions of all kinds, not necessarily directly a product one, and then can we fulfill that need when people are in a buying and shopping mindset. So people often talk about that messy middle bit as the sort of central part of that, where we have directed our sort of findability tactics. And I guess when we started doing this, they've always been blended. The funnel, as we'll come on to share as well, isn't quite as discrete as those three layers. But when it comes to delivering solutions and tactics for digital PR, we have made distinctions, found distinctions between what we do in order to drive results in those three different areas, as you will do, I'm sure, too, in the rest of your marketing. The customer journeys aren't linear. So the actual funnel isn't really a funnel. That's the sort of messy bit of it. It's not a 1, 2, 3, or very rarely is and stuff as well, where you achieve in the mind of someone some brand fame that then becomes a search, and they're reinforced with findability, and then they move in the course of the next 5 minutes to a sort of purchase on a fulfilled stage as well. That isn't how it works. These are layers to our marketing, and jobs that we've got to do. The actual purchase journey isn't linear; it moves around. We spend time, especially for considered purchases, we spend time in different parts of that funnel before we might actually move towards something that is a purchase. So we've always seen search as findability as, yes, in the middle, but actually it belongs, or the sort of behaviors that we're trying to engage with consumers with are across and blended together on that. So that messiness, especially in a world of increasingly performance-led measurement, attribution-led measurement, that top and middle part, the fame and findability bit, can often get missed out in its contribution, where the models that we know lots of brands and clients as well come to us with are focused on that sort of almost last touch attribution bit instead as well. What was the thing they did before they bought, and let's focus on marketing effort there, when of course that's not actually representative of where your audience can be engaged and who is actually in market at that time. But there are many different ways in which we can introduce fame and findability across those platforms. In that example that Google researched, just looking at somebody purchasing a car, 900 touch points over a 3-month window of people actually engaged in something that begins to look like a purchase journey that engages all of those different platforms at different sort of up and down through the funnel kind of stages that we would recognize. So it's not as discrete as those 3 layers. And of course, like we said, the fame and findability need to be hard at work for people, because the 95-5 rule that somebody captured, where certainly for a lot of categories, 95% of your market isn't in market at any one time. And if all of your effort is focused towards just that bit, just that bottom of funnel purchase journey piece, where attribution lives and a lot of that stuff, you are not generating demand. You are wasting your effort, because 95% of your market isn't ready for a purchase-driven call to action message and so as well. So fame and findability have their job to do, to generate demand, influence preference, engage audiences, solve queries, in order to ready a market for when they are at the stage when they want to be shopping and buying. So that's how we've increasingly thought about fame and findability. Then there's jobs for them to do, and they work quite together. And now you add the search everywhere piece. Like I said earlier as well, one of the things that's beginning to happen in the way that we're seeing so as well is that those discrete levels are even more blurred in many ways as well. That some things that we would have thought of as scrolling before can become a search, or a search can become a scroll. A search can become brand building in the middle pieces as well, where somebody might have had a generic search before, but it becomes a brand recognition moment that feeds into fame, brand fame, not necessarily downwards towards a purchase piece. And yes, of course, a search within a dedicated e-commerce platform can result very quickly in a purchase. So it's not this 1, 2, 3, and search in the way we're talking about search everywhere belongs in the way that those platforms operate all the way through in that kind of blended way. So we've had to change our thinking about the measurement in some cases, the discrete way in which those bits, particularly around the bits that we call fame and findability. And another contribution to that, and a lot of people, especially those focused in digital PR and SEO world, would know is that 12 months ago, what was the Google algorithm sort of locked behind this was leaked, Google leaks, and that revealed a number of things that challenged a number of the assumptions that, if you like, the quite sort of maybe narrowly focused SEO algorithm unpicking assumptions that people had believed before, and built in much more knowledge about the way in which Google tries to serve the best answers to people who are searching in Google. And a lot of those do now incorporate the signals that previously, I guess, we would have thought about building those signals at the top of the funnel, brand, fame kinds of signals. So, and that's even more true with sort of Google search and Google AIOs, Google AI overviews. So now we know as well as probably the sort of kind of narrow algorithmic unpicking job that SEO has often done. Those of us that have probably come at all of this marketplace from, in our case, digital PR, and how we might engage audiences and how we might build fame, build findability all the way through that funnel piece. We now know that a lot of the work that is done typically at the top of the funnel is contributing to that findability piece, that user experience, the experience that people have on your website. There are good clicks and bad clicks, the way in which people spend time on your website, Google is capturing those as signals that you are a good place to be sending people to in search results. So user experience and the way that most of us might have thought about that is a brand experience, as opposed to a sort of narrow SEO discipline about what we need to be, containing on our web pages, is more important in that findability and fame and findability joined up piece. Links, the kind of discipline a lot of us have grown up with, on really focused on something like findability, that is still important in the way that which brands are found in AI, and because they're signals that somebody values you and has given you authority or shared their authority with you. But the quality, the diversity, the freshness of those links, as we know from the Google Leaks bit, is now more important. And those are broader considerations that brand teams might think about. Am I in a place? Am I getting a link from somewhere where I believe my audience cares, is spending time, values, rather than something that is, like I said, a narrower view on those things? And mentions, so as opposed rather than just those links and the anchor text and a lot of the, again, sort of very focused job that some SEO-led tactics have focused on, we now know that Google does value brand mentions, and the appearance of those without the link is there as well. So, in fact, could be, as we're trying to understand it, as useful as links. These are things that we certainly work to build in terms of brand prominence and visibility and the mentions of a brand in our fame tactics, and that is contributing in a fame and findability joined up piece. And authorship. So this idea that, I suppose from brand building tactics that we would employ, that's often about taking your knowledge and experts and giving them media visibility very often. That media spokesperson job actually has a real role in contributing to authorship of content, ownership of that, visibility of that brings us from fame into findability. And these are all true. We're still working out exactly what the kind of sort of the ratio, we've never really known what the ratio in some of these things exactly is of its contribution, but they are all now much more visibly included in the way in which fame and findability, if you like, one hand washes the other in that respect. So we know, and some people may disagree or take a different point of view, but we know, as we've always known, I think, or have tried to practice, that people that are trying to deliver findability strategies, it's not really about trying to second guess Google or unpick the algorithm, because Google is all it's been trying to do. And what AI assistants are now trying to do is provide a solution to the audience. So you're better trying to think about audiences and what audiences want and need, what's special about you and your brand, what expertise, knowledge, creativity you can bring to that, and how to serve that audience through those platforms rather than just unpicking the algorithm. So we believe that. We believe that idea of authorship about real humans, in a world, we're talking so much about algorithms and technology, but it's that distinctive expertise, those real humans that we have in our organizations who deliver expertise, attaching that expertise to real people, giving them credit, is all the way through the funnel, from a sort of media spokesperson job through to the authorship on your website, through to the authorship of content we might be creating on YouTube, in social. We're certainly seeing the rise of not just user-generated content, but EGC, employee-generated content in social platforms, as being a real source of brand visibility and brand authority, and all contributing to this piece where, again, fame and findability have got a joined up job to do. And now we know, thanks to some research by Hard Numbers, that as it stands at the moment, looking at where the generative AI is sourcing its answers from, where it looks for the authority that backs up the answers that it's giving, then it is editorial. It is that the best reputations are earned, that of all of the signals that both, not just Google, but in mentions and links, but generative AI is looking to who should I put into the responses and results that I'm giving. It is that bit about editorial, high quality editorial authority, being in the media, being in good media with your brand, with your stories, is the biggest, 61% of that, the biggest contributor to the source of reputation for the results that are given. So yep, search everywhere might be a thing if we sort of broaden that, definition beyond what Google search has mostly trained us to think about. They look very different from each other, like we've talked about, but they have one thing in common: this idea of a trust source as being the brand, rather than trying to, if you like, rather than trying to over analyze the platform themselves. Think like a brand. Think about audience first, with a market orientation. Direct your effort towards, or yes, of course, with some knowledge and skills about the platforms, but not to the extent where that becomes the only job that we're doing, is how to actually deliver to the platform rather than to the audience as a brand. And so the journeys look different, search looks different, but brands remain the strongest, we believe, trust source that we should be trying to build in that fame and findability bit. And what we used to see is that virtuous circle between fame and findability, where you build fame through brand prominence, building the memory of brand campaigns in the minds of audiences, that mental availability, that builds greater brand fame. Whenever people are engaged in search, it means, one of the effects that is, means that when you are served in results, people exhibit a preference for you, even if you aren't ranked in position 1 or 2 in terms of search results. If there are brands who recognize them, evidence of that within aggregator platforms as well, if you like, in terms of being seen there and people's preferences for brands. So building brand aids the preferences that we exhibit in search, which leads to click-throughs, higher engagement, some kind of memory build-up from the brand through that experience, even if it doesn't result in a purchase yet, which increases your search visibility because of the reasons we've suggested. That aids the AI platforms and Google increasingly in delivering you in the future results, and reinforces our brand authority. So that virtuous circle is something that we, certainly over the last couple of years, have really worked to try to integrate in the way that we deliver solutions. But we now believe that it's sort of amped up, or certainly as AI rises, then it's going to be amped up even more. That those, if you like, 6 critical brand signals, which you sort of spell out a wee bit more in the report that Tash mentioned as well, that fame-driven multiplier is a real driving force for uniting fame and findability in a way that is more effective, rather than seeing these things as completely different jobs sometimes, or seeing these as jobs for different teams sometimes. It really needs to come together, we believe, as solutions. Even if it's not a single source of delivery of that, we need to try and integrate. Which takes us to the find outs and takeouts, the big actions that we think are there for brands, content, PR, marketing teams that we work with, and hopefully is relevant for some of you. There could be so many, and I've tried not to be like really granular with some of this. I think there are some granular things, but certainly the AI landscape is still changing, as we've shared and stuff as well. So for now, these are the ones that we're, I guess, trying to advise, focus on, deliver through the strategies that we're working on and stuff as well. So I wanted to leave you with 5 of those. So earn your reputation, number 1, balance your brand building, integrate your measurement, share your expertise, and I'll say a little bit about stop the slop as the 5th of those 5 big actions. So that first bit I've talked about already, but again, just to reinforce that, those of us that are involved in digital PR SEO would recognize Rand Fishkin from Spark Toro, who's really upfront in both creating research and helping us all to understand some of the changes that are going on, and then communicating that as well. And he's not necessarily a digital PR person, but one of the things that he's really come out strongly on is the rise of the large language models, AI models, is this bit on earn your reputation. PR is how you will get into those AI models, rather than thinking about perhaps some of the other tactics. And he personally is saying, I think mentions might be more important than links in the way that we used to think about those things. So earn your reputation, be delivering value as a brand, at the top of the funnel, in the middle of the funnel, thinking about your audience first and stuff as well, and particularly editorial value in that sort of PR channel. Balance your brand building, again, that's been a thing forever, but also especially a thing since there's been a Peter Field created the long and the short of it more than 10 years ago now, their report that really did try to analyze how brands grow and the role of brand building as well as sales activation, that if all you do is deliver that bottom of funnel sales activation job, you'll deliver those spikes of performance, but you won't build the investment and the growth for the long term. You need the two things working in harmony, brand building efforts and sales activation. For us, it is about trying to, and you can with measurement, begin to get a better sense of where are the most important layers of investment through that funnel, from fame, findability, fulfilled. Where should I be spending my total marketing effort and budget, in what ratios? And of course, it doesn't change dramatically month to month, but over the course of a year, this is part of the annual planning process, is to relook at that and make some decisions about where you may redirect some of your investment in order to keep that system healthy. Binnenfield talked about a 60-40 rule as sort of top to bottom, as a broad brush rule on that. But for each of us in each of our categories, in each of our brand stages, that's going to be different, and trying to understand that and to try and find a good equilibrium for where we're spending our money, rather than just, in some cases, 90, 95, 100% of budget going towards that high attribution performance bottom of funnel piece. So think about balancing brand building, and as part of that, think about integrating measurement. We don't have, maybe some people have some thoughts on that. We don't have that sort of single number, single sort of dial on the dashboard that looks at all of this in a oneer, in respect to fame, findability, the whole piece. Like, what's it all add up to, and what's the sort of way we can have one dial on the dashboard that measures it. But what we do know is that at least putting these metrics alongside each other really starts to drive different thinking and changes about the total marketing through the funnel. So thinking about how we measure fame, thinking about how we measure this sort of messy findability piece in the middle, how we measure performance and acquisition, purchase at the bottom, trying to get those into a single view. There are ways in which we can see the connection points when we do that, and it begins to, I suppose, in this bit, it begins, and our experience, to create that integration between the teams. It's not that integration isn't there, but we still certainly find the case that there are many examples where the brand building function, the PR function, content, SEO, maybe two of those are joined together, but not the four of those, and the other bits belong in the sort of marketing bit. The more that we can sensibly integrate those with more common view of the way in which our efforts contribute to each other, complement each other through the funnel piece, in this world where AI starts to blend, and those changes start to blend, we believe the distinctions between them really does help to make that growth happen. Fourth of the big bits, really do share your expertise. It isn't just about sort of author bios on your website, although that's a really good thing to do, and a sort of attribute your content to people. But really think about that across the platforms. We do know that the AI sources, yes, editorial, for that and so as well, but there is a ecosystem of content that really is providing both signals and actual content for the solutions and the results that Google AIOs and large language models provide for it. So we can't market in every single channel, and we got to make some choices. Most of us do, and so as well. But really do think about how you can, in a way, create once, publish everywhere, like trying to build certainly your knowledge sources of expertise, not just in the blog, but can that become a video case study, a video expert how-to on YouTube, not just because you'll be building an audience on YouTube, hopefully, but also because that is contributing to the signals and the sources of content for large language models. So build your instinctive knowledge and insights, share your expertise across platforms, as well as obviously in the editorial channel. And the fifth, final bit, stop the slop. You may have come across the expression, the slop, and there's examples there of it sort of in the media. The slop is a sort of a catch-all term for crap, the stuff that all of us, me included, when all these AI tools arrive, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe what I can do. So we're all playing with them. There's issues about, we now realize about how much of the environment and energy we're consuming when we're playing around with that. So maybe we should put our horns in a bit on that. But also the actual action of then, we've seen lots of it certainly as well, the temptation, if you like, the sort of, oh my God, I can create content really quickly and I'll just put that out there. That's the slop. And that isn't going to work. It's not going to work for what we're talking about in terms of this full funnel marketing. The AI models themselves don't want to serve up their own slop in a weird way. Certainly Google doesn't. And it's not as though Google won't give credit to content that has been informed by AI. It doesn't have some sort of filter like, a school might have about trying to remove AI plagiarism kind of behavior. It is that it does recognize that, if something has been wholly made by that, and therefore it isn't a source of providing genuine expertise. And, this is an example just in the LinkedIn channel, one of the places where a B2B client in particular might be using as a platform to try and build a lot of its visibility for experts and authority and stuff as well. That since its launch, recent launch, if you like, of ChatGPT, almost a 200% increase in AI posts on LinkedIn. I've certainly seen it. I mean, LinkedIn's prompting you to do it sometimes, but also people using generative AI to do that. The lengths of the posts are just increasing because people are just publishing AI generated responses. So these sort of long form posts, most long form posts are, are half of them, over half of them are AI generated. That's part of the slop. That's not doing anything. It might feel like you are, but it's not. It's not doing anything meaningful in the way that we would consider meaningful brand and findability building for a brand marketing effort. So the slop's just sloppy. By all means, leave it to your competitors. I know sometimes it might seem tempting for all of us probably just to sort of hit that generate and send button, but it kills EEAT expertise, authority, trustworthiness, and experience, the things that Google and also AI are looking for when it is giving good results. It's media unfriendly, so that editorial rule, we've certainly found that as well. The media are inevitably good authoritative media are switched on to the fact that this just looks like something you created on AI, and it's not making it through to publication. We've got to add distinctiveness, and we've got to add people and their points of view into things. By all means, we might have structured and drafted in some way, but that's as far as we're taking the use of it in our products, and we will see diminishing returns. This sort of, it'll eat itself over time. This piece. So those are 5 big actions. It could have been 15. There could have been sort of more granular, deeper ones, of course, and stuff as well. But they're the ones that, from my point of view, for brand, marketing, PR, content type teams, to be considering stuff as well. Earn reputation. Make sure that brand building is balanced off with findability. Try to integrate measurement, bring at least them into a single view of the ways in which we measure our performance, so that we're not just looking at these in isolation. Share your expertise across platforms, and don't hit the send button when we are sending out any of our content that we're creating, whether it's editorial content or on-site content, that has just been purely generated by AI, because it's not going to work. No idea what the time is, but Tash hasn't come in and told me to you haven't pulled the trapdoor lever yet. So,
No, we're good. We're good. We've got 10 minutes.
Okay, great. So there may be some questions, there may be some feedback or experience, insights, thoughts that you've got. We're all learning, so I'm keen to learn as much as anything else from all of your experiences. And so please.
Thanks, Colin. Well done. We have got a couple of questions. We have one from Brycott. I hope I pronounced that okay. And their question is about whether we have cut any data around the proportion of mobile data when looking at the volumes that we're talking about today, and how interesting it will be to see how much more AI generative search is embedded into the mobile phones. I had a very quick look at the report in advance of that question, and we don't cut it by mobile data, and I suggest it's probably a little bit too early to start looking at that in a meaningful way anyway, given that the scales that we're talking about are still quite small even in the total numbers. That said, in the report there is sorry, I was just going to finish off. In the what we break down in the report is looking a little bit more by channels, such as PR, SEO, social, influencer, but not then split between mobile and desktop. Sorry, Colin.
Yeah. I don't know other people's experience of, again, particularly use of AI, generative AI. Is I'm certainly in the way that, a lot of other social search, Google search even as well, might be much more of a mobile thing than was once the case. I'm still probably, maybe it's because generative AI still feels like much more of a sort of iterative conversation. I feel more comfortable doing it on my desktop, but you're right. I don't necessarily have. I think I've seen something, but I don't necessarily have an answer in terms of desktop versus mobile split of usage, and particularly usage for the search like kind of stuff. But that's a good prompt.
We have another question from Jasmine about how important Wikipedia is in the world of generative AI. If I can just jump in again, I've been able to prep a little bit, but what we were looking at last week was a really interesting report by Edinburgh University, which I've put a link in the chat of. And Edinburgh University have been working with Wikipedia. They call it Wikimedia, and they've been looking at all the different changes across everything related to Wikipedia over the last 9 years. Wikipedia are obviously worried about it from their own point of view, being one of the most trusted places that people can find information. And so they are very conscious about how much AI generated content, citations, fake stuff is actually being put into the editorial process. So I think if anyone's interested, then you can look at that report. They come at it very much from that point of view. But equally, as we know, Wikipedia is working really hard at making sure that everything that they've got in terms of the citations are trustworthy, and therefore it retains its authority and its trustworthiness. They've got a massive brand job to do there to make sure that they can, in this world of huge amounts of new content flying into their editorial process. So Wikipedia are fighting very hard to remain as influential as they are. Which leads us to the point around Wikipedia and how important that is for LLMs, because they know that LLMs and the AI models are all learning about brands on Wikipedia. So Wikipedia has always been useful. It's never been hugely it's never been a really big part of a normal PR job, but it is a big part of a corporate reputational job. So I would say if there's ever a time to make sure that your wiki page is up to date and that you're making the most of it, then it's now, because the LLMs are using the Wikipedia pages to try and learn. So if you need any help on that, we partner with an agency who is really good at getting things through the editorial process. So let us know.
We'll see Vicky, Victoria Cobden, AI's role in helping to manage or not manage misinformation, disinformation online. Again, a good question. I mean, I think, what do I think? I think we all have to do our best to try and make sure that good answers, right answers, valid answers, relevant answers are created in the content on behalf of our brands that we are making it. Do I have much faith? I suppose in same way that I guess we're seeing almost a rowing back from social platforms in their role as, sort of, I guess, disregarding themselves as a media platform and feeling as though they're obliged to try and manage the content is on there and the sort of rightness of that content and stuff as well. I think that I imagine is hands off. I think the bit that I do have faith in, having gone through the stage of AI and all of that kind of hallucinations stuff, and Google, over relying on Reddit as a source of its answers probably in the 12 months ago with AI responses, and other platforms have all seen examples of that kind of wrong or hallucination kind of answers. I think they're much better, and I think they're much better not because they feel responsible in some way, but because they know that their success is built on all of us finding them effective at answering or engaging with us in that conversations that we're having in journeying towards solutions. So as I said, obviously they're learning all the time. Some of the ways in which they're learning has come up for criticism in terms of the rights and copyrights of the materials that they're learning from. But so I don't have ethical faith in the owners of AI platforms in that sense though as well, but I do probably believe that their desire to give us good answers will, continually improve the quality of the responses and information that we get, and therefore it's our job to make sure that our content is distinctive, interesting, good, well sourced, available, in, like I said, editorial and other channels, so that we are providing that.
Just
So, yeah.
to add there, slightly different to what Vicky's asking, but I think one bit of advice I've been given is that if you believe that the content about a brand is wrong, then you should use the feedback that most LLMs have got at the bottom of any page. So it might be thumbs up, thumbs down, a bit of feedback. I know Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT have all got that functionality, and the more you help it train, particularly if it's a brand that's that's intimate to you, like I've done it for bottle content when they've tried to mash up some details about us and another agency. I let it know, and you should use that because not many people do, and if it's your brand, then you want to make sure it's learning, so no better person than yourself to help them learn. I think that might be the last question, and I think it's about 4 minutes at the end. So
Thank you.
Unless anyone's got any last points or questions. Oh, there's a nice clap. I think we'll call it a day. Enjoy the sunshine, everyone.
Yeah, I'm
It's
impressed
been,
if anyone's indoors listening to a webinar on such a sunny day that we're having here. So yeah, thank you all very much. It's wonderful to have so many of you join us, and follow up, please, if there's any questions, things that you can help us to understand, insights that you might want to provide as well. So as well, we're all kind of contributing, hopefully, to the body of knowledge and insights that we can all keep building. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.